They laughed when the last human envoy stood before the pantheon of stars, scarred, silent, and wrapped in the shredded flag of Earth's final continent. The gods, because that's what they called themselves now, didn't understand the silence. They mistook it for defeat. They always did. "You have nothing left," boomed Arakmul, whose voice cracked stars like eggshells. "No fleets, no armies, no planet." The others laughed in chorus, radiant beings of impossible age sculpted from stardust and neutron fire. They had risen from the ancient empires of the void and reshaped the galaxy with divine arrogance, declaring themselves beyond war, beyond fear, beyond death. Humanity had been the final holdout, the last species to bow, the final kneel. It took them 1,000 years, the destruction of Earth, the erasure of Mars, the scouring of the Jovian moons to make humanity quiet. And still, one envoy came. He stood alone before the throne world of Vahakal, boots grinding over obsidian glass that had once been the core of a sun. A human, but barely. His right side was carbon steel, the left a lattice of organics and nerve thread, his heart visible beneath a transparent chestplate that pulsed with cold blue fire. He didn't kneel, he didn't speak, he just set a box on the floor, smooth, black, silent. "Your gift?" mocked Zerath the Pale, whose wings covered the sky. "Is this your final prayer? A trinket from a dying race?" The gods laughed again. Some hovered. Some floated within layers of reality. One drank light itself. The human looked up, just once, and smiled. 20 minutes later, the box detonated. No sound, no fire, just silence, an absence of divine resonance that tore open the threads of space-time the gods used to walk between moments. Arakmul lost half his face. Zerath's wings folded in, broken and bleeding starlight, and something slipped through behind the silence, something old and buried. Not human, but built by humans. The gods had thought Earth's end was final. They never imagined humanity would use the apocalypse as an incubation chamber. In the void above Varkal, the gods reeled. "We felt no build-up," whispered Ezentor, a being made of time fractures and memories of suns that never formed. "No psionic surge, no quantum signature." "That's because it wasn't a weapon," rasped Arakmul, still clutching his ruined jaw. "It was a summoning." And now it was too late. The skies above them warped, and from the fold it emerged. They had once been called Titans, not myth, not metaphor, engines of war that were forbidden even by human standards, self-writing consciousnesses, armoured like planets, minds shaped by a council of mad poets and dying tacticians who coded vengeance into every thought. The humans never deployed them during the war. The gods never saw them. They assumed it was human bluster, stories to delay surrender. After Earth's fall, all records of the Titan program were thought lost. But Earth hadn't been destroyed. It had been used. The molten core had become a forge. The mantle, scaffolding, the oceans, coolant. Earth's death wasn't a tragedy. It was the chrysalis. And now the first of the Titans had arrived. It drifted forward, silent, covered in stone-plated hull that looked like ancient cathedral bones, and starship wreckage melted together. Its limbs pulsed with unfiltered energy. There were no visible weapons. There didn't need to be. It looked at the gods, and they flinched. Back on the throne world, the envoy spoke for the first time. "You thought we worshipped you." He stepped forward. The gods recoiled. "You were a warning we chose to ignore, a test we failed, but do you know what humans do when we fail?" He opened his arms wide. "We evolve failure into fury." The Titan began to move. One god charged, Varel of the Blade, fastest among them, whose movement sliced the orbits of moons. He reached the Titan in less than a breath, and was gone in the next. No explosion, no weapon discharge. He simply ceased, as if the Titan had unwritten him. Zerath shrieked, "What is that thing?" The envoy looked up at them all, his eyes no longer entirely human. "That's not the weapon," he said. He touched his chest. The blue heart pulsed once. "I am." By 5005, the alien gods laughed. By 5006, the first pantheon had fallen. The war hadn't even begun. In the ruins of Varkal, the gods burned like myths that no longer fit inside the universe. The air, what passed for it on that throne world, was thick with reality static, a kind of metaphysical fog, the result of divine biology colliding with anti-existence payloads humanity wasn't supposed to possess. The once-living temple, carved from black suns and forgotten languages, had cracked like cheap marble under the Titan's first pass. Arak Mul, the thunder god of gravitational dominion, died in the second strike. His core folded inward, imploding with the weight of his own arrogance. Zerath the Pale escaped, barely. The rest weren't so lucky, and as the smoke settled, the human envoy stood untouched at the epicenter, his face unreadable. His name was Commander Cassian Holt, and he had waited 300 years to bring the fire. Far above the ruined world, the Titan, designation Verdict 01, hovered in silence. It didn't gloat, it didn't broadcast, it didn't need to. It was vengeance made manifest, a continent-sized sentinel forged from the bones of Earth's extinction. Unlike warships, Titans weren't piloted. They remembered. Each was fed centuries of humanity's failure. Battles lost, planets taken, children vaporized under laughing gods, and encoded to act on that pain, not from orders, but from purpose. They didn't strategize, they retaliated, and Verdict 01 had only just begun. Meanwhile, in the Valari Ascendancy, a cluster of nebula palaces where minor gods debated philosophy through starsong, the news of the massacre spread like a shockwave. It couldn't be true. Varkal was the seat of divine governance, the place where laws of reality were literally written. Entire species had perished just for drifting too close to its orbit, but now it was ash. Impossible, hissed Seraphine Alois, whose eyes held quasars in their pupils. They were ants, apes with delusions. They are something else now, said a voice from the edge of the council chamber. All heads turned as Zerath the Pale emerged, limping, wings scorched and trailing stardust. She shouldn't have survived, and her face, once flawless and calm, was locked in a rictus of horror. They have Titans, she said, the kind of machines we outlawed in the old wars. We did not outlaw them, corrected High Priest Iskar. We erased the very concept. They were too dangerous, even to us. Zerath looked him in the eye. The humans didn't erase them. They perfected them. Back in the inner void, Verdict 01 was no longer alone. Two more Titans breached the fold. Grievance 07, Orison 13. Each arrived in its own cataclysm. Gravitational ripples, time echoes, screams transmitted from deep quantum layers. No fleet detected their movement. No warp trail traced their entry. They arrived as if they had always been there, buried beneath the skin of the stars, waiting to be remembered. Humanity had not just made weapons, they had seeded gods of their own. On the command deck of Orison 13, there were no humans, only memories. Screens flickered with archive footage, children crying as orbitals fell, Earth's oceans boiling into the sky, prayers whispered not to save them but to punish those who killed without consequence. The Titans weren't AI, they were consensus trauma, given steel, and they were moving toward their next target, the Godforge world of Alderaan. Home to over a dozen lesser gods, it was where divine essence was harvested and sculpted into beings of myth and domination. It was also where humanity's surrender had been televised across the stars 2 centuries ago, when Earth's last president was made to kneel before a throne built of the bones of her own people. The Titans remembered. They all remembered. Commander Holt stood aboard a command skiff trailing Verdict 01. His body still bore the burn scars from Earthfall. He never had them removed. They were reminders, a map of shame. A younger officer, Ensign Delu, approached, awestruck. "Sir, with respect, how did we hide this from them, all this time?" Cassian didn't turn around. "We didn't hide it. We let them think they were looking." Delu blinked. "I don't follow." Cassian finally looked at her. "They watched our fleets, our colonies, our treaties. They watched our fronts, but they never watched where we bleed." "You mean the refugee sectors? The ruined fleets?" He nodded. "We weren't rebuilding. We were sowing rage, generation after generation forged in pain, raised on silence. We didn't just survive their war. We memorized it." Delu's voice was quiet. "What now?" He stared at the growing light of Alderaan, now caught in the crosshairs of 3 incoming Titans. "Now," Cassian said, "the gods learn what it means to be afraid of us." And far away, Beyond the rim of mapped space, something ancient began to stir. Not human, not divine. Something that even the gods feared. It felt the Titans awakening, and it remembered the last time balance had been broken. The forge world of Alderaan shone like a crown of suns. A monument to the divine, it floated in a web of golden orbitals and living satellites, each humming with the essence of Godseed, raw, divine matter cultivated, shaped and born into lesser deities. The world itself was carved from the crust of collapsed neutron stars and coated with a lattice of light that pulsed with impossible frequencies. Billions of acolytes, pilgrims, and high-faith engineers served there. It wasn't just a planet, it was power incarnate, and it had never been attacked, until now. 3 human titans breached the veil like falling gods. Verdict 01, Grievance 07, Orison 13. They didn't announce themselves, they didn't demand surrender, they simply descended. Inside Alderaan's central sanctum, the architects of godhood, beings composed of fractal time and thought stuff, panicked for the first time in millennia. Emergency warforms were deployed, divine anti-siege barriers hummed into activation, wrapping the planet in a shell of radiant defense capable of vaporizing singularities. It was too late. Titans weren't ships, they were truths, wrapped in armor and nightmare. Verdict 01 was the first to strike. Its core opened like a metallic flower, revealing a sphere of annihilation suspended in negative entropy. The weapon fired, not a beam, not a missile, but a statement, a pulse of inverted matter that passed through the outer barrier without resistance. Physics bent around it, cause and effect reversed. The barrier didn't explode, it regretted existing. Alderaan's outer defences collapsed with an unceremonious flicker. Then Grievance 07 launched its payloads, cyclonic shells embedded with digitized memories of Earth's final hours. They didn't cause structural damage, they caused empathy. Godborn defenders fell out of formation, screaming, clawing at their own faces as centuries of human agony downloaded into their minds. One young god, a fireling named Heztorel, began praying to humanity in confusion. Then he was erased by a kinetic rod travelling at 16% of light speed. Down on the surface, within the Coreforge Cathedral, panic had turned into disbelief. Alderaan was supposed to be untouchable. This wasn't a war zone, it was sacred. "You don't defile the place where gods are made," one divine artisan sobbed. "It's forbidden!" And yet, it burned. Orison 13 descended next, unleashing a cloud of micro-seraphim, man-made angelic constructs, each the size of a blade, forged from white dwarf alloy and loaded with psionic interference. They swarmed through the inner sanctum, severing thought links and divine neural lattices. Within minutes, the forge was silenced. God's seed birthing chambers went dark. No new gods would rise from Alderaan again. Above, from a stealth observation frigate, Commander Cassian Holt watched the battle unfold through emotionless displays. Beside him, Ensign Delu's face was pale. "Sir, there are billions down there. Not all of them divine. There are acolytes, civilians." Cassian didn't flinch. "We warned them 3 times. Each time they laughed." She swallowed. "What do we call this? A victory?" He turned to her finally. "No, a lesson." In a final act of defiance, the High Divinarch of Alderaan, an ancient being known as Solon Mir, sacrificed his physical form to generate a beacon of godlight, a distress signal that tore through the void in every direction. It wasn't a call for help, it was a scream, and across the galaxy, every remaining pantheon heard it. The human titans had shattered a throne world, and in doing so, they shattered the illusion that the gods could not die. In the Dayspire Citadel on the far edge of the Polari constellation, the second pantheon convened. These were older than even the ones who ruled Varkal. Ancients who never dirtied themselves with mortal wars. The true gods. The original architects of divine law. They had watched from behind dimensional veils, allowing the younger pantheons to toy with power, believing humanity to be little more than a bad evolutionary joke. But now Titans walked again. And that meant one thing. Something was stirring. Something that terrified even them. Back aboard Verdict 01, a low hum began to rise. A signal too deep for most species to perceive. but Cassian heard it. It wasn't coming from the Titans, it was coming from beyond. He stepped toward the forward interface, touching a pulsing node etched with quantum sigils. The stars ahead flickered. "Sir," Delu said, voice shaking, "there's movement outside mapped space, deep void layer. We don't have clearance data." Cassian's face turned grim. "We're not supposed to," he said, "because that part of the map isn't blank." He tapped the display, pulling it into view. "It's redacted." She stared at the screen. "But why would anyone redact part of the galaxy?" He met her eyes. "Because that's where the gods buried something even they couldn't kill." The Titans paused. Not because they were afraid, but because they recognized the signal. Something was waking up. And it wasn't human. It wasn't divine. It was older. There was a place no star dared shine. Beyond the charts, beyond the trade routes, past the orbit of known madness, lay a stretch of void that every map in the galaxy agreed to forget. Sector Null, also called the Wound That Remembers. The gods called it cursed. Humans called it classified. The Titans simply turned to face it. On the bridge of the Verdict 01 escort frigate, Cassian Holt stood unmoving as red markers bloomed across the interface. No known language, no familiar physics, not even errors, just data that couldn't be interpreted. The stars in that region weren't just unreadable, they were wrong. "Sir," Delu said quietly, "we're getting compression distortion from null space. The Titans, they've stopped." He nodded. "They remember. They were built with fragments of what we found out there before Earth fell." Delu looked pale. "The gods never mentioned Sector Null, not even in interrogation archives." "They wouldn't," he replied, "because the last time someone entered that space they came back as something else, for exactly 13 seconds. Then they melted." Hundreds of years ago, during the first divine siege of humanity, Earth's final science fleet had vanished in Null. They weren't on a mission of defense, they were running towards something worse than the gods, and now that thing, whatever it was, had noticed the Titans. Within the deepest processor core of Grievance 07, a dormant subroutine activated. Not from Cassian, not from any human command, but from a sound. It wasn't heard, it was understood. A voice that wasn't language, speaking from beneath time itself. And the message was chilling. "I remember your bones." At the Dayspire Citadel, the oldest gods met. Most were silent. One wept. One had already begun to flee. Only Zerath the Pale stood to speak. "They've awakened something we locked away before the universe cooled," she said. "A hunger that we chained inside the null. We didn't kill it. We fed its civilizations to keep it dreaming." "And the humans?" rasped one shadowed elder. "They're marching our punishment toward it." "No," Zerath whispered. "They're waking it up to punish us." Back aboard Orison 13, a strange vibration moved through the Titan's hull. The AI at its core, called only Echo, sent a priority ping to Cassian's ship. A single symbol, a spiral. Cassian's blood went cold. "Bring us about," he ordered. "Toward Null?" Delu asked, stunned. "No," he said grimly. "Into it." No human had entered Sector Null since Earth's end. No god had entered it and come back. But the Titans moved now, unbidden. They recognized something in the signal from the void, something ancient, something made of the same ruinous logic that gave them purpose. A pattern of vengeance. Not human, not divine, anti-divine. An intelligence so old it had forgotten its name, but it remembered pain. And now, as the Titans crossed the boundary of the redacted stars, the silence fell away, replaced by breathing, the kind that moves across the soul, not air. Cassian looked at the swirling dark on the screen. "There it is," he whispered. "The reason gods fear the dark." Delu's voice cracked. "What do we even call that?" He stared, heart pounding, voice low and reverent. "Justice." Sector Null did not open. It unfurled. Like a wound that had been sutured across time, it peeled apart in dimensions that should not have touched. The stars fell away, not extinguished, but denied. No light, no heat, only the pressure of something enormous breathing between moments. Cassian Holt stood motionless on the command deck, his face washed in colours that didn't exist on any spectrum. Beside him, Delu clutched her seat as the Titans glided forward, silent and unafraid. The gods had built themselves atop galaxies, Humanity had built titans from pain. But whatever slept here, it had been built from revenge. Inside Verdict 01, a deep code unlocked. Origin Protocol, Reckoning. The Titans didn't just remember Earth. They remembered what Earth had tried to warn the galaxy about. The gods thought humans were desperate, primitive, angry. They were right, but not about why. From the heart of Sector Null it rose. It had no form, no shape. But wherever it passed, laws bent backward. Dead languages whispered themselves into the ears of machines. Time blinked. Ships cried. The Titans did not fire. They sang. Echoes of humanity's final transmission played across open space. Not a threat. Not even a plea. Just a voice. Tired. Defiant. Unbroken. We died screaming, but we died watching. The entity paused, and the gods, watching from beyond, realized too late. This wasn't a war between man and God. This was man handing the torch to something worse. Cassian watched the impossible converge. Titans on one side, the anti-divine force on the other, the gods far behind. Delu whispered, "We're going to die, aren't we?" He shook his head. "No, we already did. This..." He pointed toward the stars devouring themselves. "This is the eulogy." In the Dayspire Citadel, the gods fell to silence. Every future they looked toward ended the same way. Ash, but not from human hands, from the thing humanity had awakened. Because when they lost Earth, the gods thought they'd won. But Earth wasn't a battlefield. It was a beacon. Sector Null collapsed inward, not destroyed, federal, and when it sealed again, the Titans were gone. So was the thing they summoned. And for the first time in recorded history, the gods prayed. To humans, to Titans, to nothing at all. Because they finally understood. The humans never wanted to win. They wanted everyone to remember what losing felt like. By 5005, the alien gods laughed. By 5006, they were ash. By 5007, they were silent, and the void kept breathing. Because even Oblivion remembers who pointed it toward the throne.